Welcome to Davidson Handyman. Today I'm going to be showing you how to assemble the Coleman B200 gas-powered mini bike. This one should be fun. So, when you open the box, you're going to see that the bike comes in a welded steel frame and it's wired to it. So you want to take these wires off and get the bike out from this frame, because this frame is just to support it during shipping. So you'll take the wires off at the bottoms here on both sides and at the tops, and then we will slide it out of the frame. So let's get that done, and I'll be back. All right, so I got the wires off. So now before we can get this thing out of the frame, there's a couple of bolts we need to undo. So we need to take off this bracket here, and these are 14 millimeter bolts, 9/16 if you're using standard. You're gonna take these off on both corners here, here and here. And then we're gonna have to take this side bar off right here. So let me back up so you can see the whole thing. So we're taking off this cross beam, this right here in the middle, and that. And then once that's done, you're gonna come over here into the front and you're gonna remove this bolt and this bolt, and then we're gonna slide this out, and that should allow the frame to come out the side. So I'm gonna take care of that, and then I will be back shortly. Okay, I removed the cross beams and the one in the center. Basically, I just used the socket and a crescent wrench to hold the lock nut in the back. Pretty easy. That's pretty much all I've removed so far, and we're almost there. So now I'm just going to very delicately remove this and this and make sure that the bike doesn't fall. But I think right now I want to move this cable out of the way and then take this tire out. So we'll get that out of the way. That's one less thing we have to worry about. So it looks like that's it. So I'll grab that, take this out, and then I'm gonna slide the bike out the side, and then this structure you can repurpose for something else. I don't know, do some box jumps, or I don't know, build a fish tank, who knows. So let's get that going, and we'll get this bike out of here and get it together. Okay, so I got the front end out, but it's a little thick in the back. So we'll deal with that. But before I get to that, I wanted to mention I used some adjustable pliers to hold that side of the bolt while I loosen this with the crescent wrench. And there are two, there are two little washers on here. One has an R on it, and the other isn't labeled. But just be mindful of where that was located. It was on the inside of the left strut if you're looking at the bike, if you're sitting on it. But just be mindful of where those were, because that'll be important during the reassembly, because this is going to be the axle for our front wheel. So I'll put that to the side for now. It's a little bit tricky getting the front forks over this. You kind of have to turn the wheel to get the fork to come in and then slide it out the front. But everything turned out great. In retrospect, I recommend taking this box off the back. This is your hardware box, because it was a little tricky getting it to fit. Ugh, see, now we have the clearance. So take that box off before you try and take this out. I'm gonna take the rest of the bike out, get this cage out of the way, and then we'll start the assembly process. So, making progress. All right, the bike is out. Next thing I'm gonna do is just unwrap everything, take all the twisty ties off, open the hardware box, lay everything out, and then we'll start putting it together. Okay, so everything is unwrapped. We have the front wheel, which we took out first. There's a twist tie that goes through the center of the wheel that I'll undo later. This front wheel fender was zip tied under the back wheel here. And then the hardware box contained a couple of wrenches, an Allen wrench. This looks like a wrench tool, yep, for seating the nuts. This is gonna be your handlebar clamp with the associated, what are these, Allens? Yeah, Allen bolts, and then a couple of zip ties, probably for wiring. And then under the bubble wrap, we have our handles and our handlebars, and then our other handle. So we're gonna get these handlebars mounted up, and I'll walk you through that process as I get it going. And yeah. And I'm gonna leave this gas cap protector on until the end, just to prevent any smudges or scratching or anything. But yeah, everything's looking pretty good. So let's get these handlebars on. All right, so the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna pick up the handlebar assembly and set it into these grooves. You'll see under here, there'll be some notches, and there's some teeth ingrained in the handlebar itself. That's for grip for these clamps. You can see it right in there. So what you'll do is you'll set the handlebars on here. You wanna make sure the cables aren't twisted, kinked, or tangled, because you're gonna have your handlebars, your levers attaching to the handlebar like that on each side. So you wanna make sure there's no kinks or twists. Then get your handlebars in place. And I just set it up with one screw right now, because what I'm gonna do is sit on the seat, adjust the handlebars to whatever angle I want, and then I'll put in the screws and I'll tighten it down. So that's gonna be step one. And let's get to it. Okay, handlebars are installed. You wanna make sure you torque these to 15 foot-pounds. If you have a torque wrench, use it. If you don't, I don't know, crank down on it like everyone else does. Just make sure they're tight. After the handlebars are in, you're gonna wanna install the brake levers. So you'll see there's a clamp here. You'll remove the bolts, open this up, set it around here, put the bolts back in, and then you wanna adjust wherever you wanna clamp it to based on where you want it to be aligned with the handle grip. So you'll do this for both sides. Again, make sure your wires aren't crossed. I had to actually, these were crossed over and X'd in shipping, so I had to untangle them. So you might have to do the same, but you'll do the same for this side, underneath here. Tighten them down, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, our brake levers are now attached on both sides. A couple things to note during this process. This side, you have a throttle assembly. This is your throttle cable right here. It gets in the way. There's a giant screw right here. So your brake lever has to be lower than this screw in order to actuate fully. So I would adjust this one first and then come over and adjust this one so that they feel the same height. I also switched to a socket for these instead of using the tiny little wrench that came with the pack. These are 8mm or 5/16 if you're using standard. It's much easier, and you can make them really nice and secure. So we have our handlebars attached, torqued to 15 foot-pounds, and now we have our brake levers. We're good to go. Next up, the front wheel. Stay tuned. Okay, so I took the twisty tie off of the front wheel. One thing that's very important, you want to make sure the tread is facing forward. So think of these as arrows, and you want them pointing straight up. So make sure the tire is oriented properly. Then we're going to seat it between the forks, and we're going to feed this bolt through the first fork, and you want a spacer on both sides of the tire. So this is going to go through the fork. Let's see if I can actually maybe do this with one hand here. Through the fork, spacer. I'm putting the one with the R on the right. So if you're sitting on the bike, this is on your right. So I'm going to put that spacer there. I'm going to feed this then through the tire. Then I'm going to put this spacer on like that, and then feed it all the way to the end, and then tighten the nut. So that's how we assemble the front tire. So let's get to it, making sure the tread is facing forward. If you're sitting on the bike, the arrows are pointing up, so to speak, and should be pretty straightforward. Let's hit it. Okay, so this is not very straightforward. It's very difficult to try and lift the bike up, balance it, and feed the rod through, line up the tire, blah, blah, blah. But also, you need to make sure this rotor goes through that little gap right there, which had a plastic protection piece in it. So you can see the little brake pads right there. So this rotor, when you're putting it on the bike, like so, has to go into that little groove as you feed the rod through and as you lift the bike up and get the spacers in. So having two people for this would be very beneficial, because you could have somebody hold the bike up and it would be no problem. But if you're by yourself like me, you gotta kind of figure it out. So I'm straddling the bike and I'm lifting it up on the handlebars, and then using my thighs underneath the frame to hold the bike in the air while I have both of my hands free to get the wheel on. So that's kind of the one person method that I've been able to figure out. Unless you have a jack or something else, some jack stands or something you want to put the bike on to raise it up. But whatever. Just something to note. You need to make sure that rotor is in between the brake pads, and there is a black plastic spacer in there you got to take out before you do this. So, all right, let's try it again. All right, we did it. That took some doing though. But you can see the rotor in between the brake pads right there. And I got a spacer here. So the rod went through, spacer through the wheel, making sure the rotor is in between the pads. Coming out, other spacer coming through, and then the nut. So this is a 17mm nut. You'll need that, and you'll need I want to say 13mm or a crescent wrench or some pliers or whatever, just to hold this tight while you tighten this nut. And one other thing you can do before you try to put the wheel on is put the kickstand down. So I had the kickstand down while I was straddling the bike and holding it up with my legs. It took some doing, I'm not gonna lie. One person, not very fun, but it took maybe 15 seconds to get it figured out. So nothing crazy, but this is the little plastic piece that was in between the brake pads. So just remember to move that. All right, let's get this tightened up, and then we will put on that front wheel fender. Nice red fender, make it look sharp. All right, let's see it. All right, so for the fender, you'll notice there's 2 brackets here, 2 screws here, and 2 screws here. And you'll also notice in the fender, there's 2 holes there and 2 holes there. So the warning side will go on the inside because no one wants to see a warning label when you're riding down the street looking fly. So look at that. You're just gonna unscrew those. These are 8mm again. The nuts and bolts there, a little hard to see. There you go. And you'll assemble it the same way. Just put the fender on, put the bolts through, and tighten them up. So let's get at it. Okay, so to make things easier, instead of using the little wrenches or even a socket wrench, because these are kind of a pain, I just switched to a impact drill with a 10mm socket on it. The lock nuts are 10mm, the inside bolts are 8, but I used a crescent wrench to hold those in place and then just zip these off with the impact driver. Putting them back on, you want to make sure the bolt goes through the inside of the fender, through, and then you have the washer and then the lock nut. And you'll do the same for both sides. So, just kind of like that. So I'll get these buttoned up and then I'll be back. All right, so we got it together. A couple of things that are left to do. One is the pedals. You'll see these come twisty tied up. And some of the bikes you might get will come either with the right pedal already removed, or some require you to remove the right pedal just to get the bike out. But if you have to assemble the right pedal, let me show you what to do here. This one, it came with the right pedal already mounted and secured. So let me just untwist this. Pretty high-tech twist ties they got here. Commercial grade. There we go. All right. So if you have to assemble the right pedal, what you'll do is you'll, see if I can get a good view here. All right. So you'll put the spring, then you'll put the washer. There's a little black washer in here. Then you'll put the pedal. Then you'll put the pin through the top all the way, and then secure it with the cotter pin right here. All right, so spring, washer, pedal, pin, cotter pin. So that is the assembly of the bike. Now, to prepare to ride it, you want to make sure that the tires are inflated properly. So these ones says 10 PSI operating pressure, 24 PSI max to seat bead, max load 253 pounds. Well, I can ride it, yay! So 10 PSI doesn't seem like a lot, but I'll check the tire pressure on that and the back, and then we'll have to get some gas and some oil, and then we can fire it up. All right, so this concludes the build. This particular bike, the tires front and back, 10 PSI is what the tire pressure should be. It takes, for oil, the SAE 10W30, which is like conventional motor oil, and unleaded gasoline with at least an 86 octane or higher. So your 87 octane regular gas or higher. For your particular bike, refer to the owner's manual and make sure that you use the right gasoline and oil and tire pressure to make sure you are operating as safely as possible. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.